Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we are going to talk about my leader tier list for Secret of Power. I'm going to do a tier list for both constructed and limited, so stay tuned if you're interested in in preparing your pre-release and knowing which are the best leaders for your pre-release, but also for draft and sealed. Thanks to Card Market for sponsoring this video. A few things to set before I'm getting into the tier list. Obviously, we are still 2 weeks before the release and the meta is far from established. As you know, the playability of leaders is heavily depends on the meta. It's relatively rare to have leaders that are like incredibly powerful just in a vacuum. Most of the leaders need to be compared to what the meta is going to be like. So take this into account as we get into the list, and don't take anything I say as the ultimate gospel. And the second thing I want to say is that I still haven't played any draft or limited so far. I usually only play those in real life, so I can't play them until the set is released. So take my limited tier list with an even bigger grain of salt. I'm definitely going to try my best to kind of give you an idea on what are the best leaders for limited, and hopefully you can use that information for your pre-release. But don't say, once again, take this as the gospel, as I haven't played limited so far, so I could be really off on what are going to be the best leaders. The idea is, once again, is to give you a basic idea as we get into the pre-release. My 5 criteria here for constructed is either I think the card is meta defining, that's going to be the S tier. The B tier is going to be, I think the leader is going to be meta, that means it's going to be competitive. C is situational, so it's either I think the leader is going to see some competitive play and is going to have some competitive success, but it's going to be limited to very few events. It's basically a leader that you can perform with and do well in the event, but it requires a very specific meta to really work, because it's a deck that is very powerful in certain situations, but that can be really bad in other situations. So this is a S, so A, B. My C tier then is not quite good enough. Not quite good enough means that the leader can do some really powerful things and could be potentially competitive in the future if it receives a bit more support, but it's currently just not quite there in terms of competitiveness. Once again, it's a deck that you can do well in a constructed event with, but it's still a suboptimal option, and you're probably putting yourself at a disadvantage for playing it. And then finally, unplayable. Obviously, everything is playable, whatever you want to play, like nobody is telling you what to play, but unplayable means that the leader is suboptimal, not competitive, that there's no reason to play this leader over existing options, and that playing this leader in a tournament will put you at a significant disadvantage. My rating is a little bit different for limited. So in red, basically the S tier is going to be the best leaders for limited play. Solid in orange means it's a leader that you can rely on, and it's gonna be a good leader, and you're quite happy to be able to play it, but it's not quite the best. Playable means you are not happy to play this leader, and you would rather play something else, but basically you don't have much of a choice, or the best cards in your pool are of those colors, so you kind of have to fall back and play this leader instead. But it's still a playable leader. Playing it puts you at a disadvantage, but if your pool of cards is good enough, you can make up, basically a good pool of cards can make up for the fact that the leader is a little bit worse. And then bad means that playing this leader in limited puts you at a significant disadvantage, and that playing this leader over the other ones is going to be a very massive uphill battle, and it's going to be very difficult to make up for that disadvantage by having a better pool of cards. So you try to avoid playing those leaders at all cost. And then finally, the specialized options are the leaders that are not, can be good, but requires a very specific build, require a very specific pool of cards, or require you to draft a very specific way to be able to make them work. Moving on, we're going to start first with the Chancellor Palpatine from the Spotlight decks. Chancellor Palpatine is very close to the idea of Kylo Ren, and we see Kylo Ren as being the best leader in Legend of the Force, which is very interesting. So it has this kind of combo-y aspect to it. He has the ability basically gives you free card advantage. You do have to pay 1 to make it work, so that's definitely a significant cost. But it allows you to sculpt your hands in order to have as many plots as possible. And then when you basically deploy Chancellor Palpatine, you're going to be able to play all those cards, and then you're going to have a pretty big discount. So it's very similar. So once again, it's very similar to Kylo Ren. It's a huge deployment. As he comes out, it becomes like, it just explodes on the opponent. So, in my opinion, this leader is significantly worse than Kylo Ren. From what I've tested, I've tried to make this leader works, and basically what makes this leader a lot worse than Kylo Ren, there's 2 major aspects that makes this leader significantly worse than Kylo Ren. The first one is that Kylo Ren does have Sentinels, and Sentinels on a leader this is a leader that has an ability that has literally no impact on the game. Like, you can't stabilize the game using his ability. Like, his ability doesn't help you stabilize the game, and quite the opposite. In fact, you actually have to pay for it. While Kylo Ren, yes, the Kylo Ren's ability does not allow you to stabilize the game either, but at least it's free, so you don't have to worry about it so much. And the second disadvantage of and a leader like this, and then you deploy on 7, right? So whenever you have such a late deployment, you want your deployment to basically stabilize the game. And the thing is, like, Kylo Ren, when he deploys, will stabilize because he has Sentinels himself. So you're just going to deploy, put a bunch of upgrades on him, and you're going to have this giant Sentinels that just protects the ground. With Chancellor Palpatine, it's a little bit more complicated than this. You are going to be, maybe you can get some plot cards which have Sentinels, and there's also the plot card that gives -2 attack if your opponent attacks the base. But if you don't find those specific plot cards, then you don't have anything that stabilizes. Or you might find the first light, which can actually ambush into space. So there's a specific card, but those are like, you need to find the right card for the right moment, while Kylo Ren much more consistently will stabilize in a much more definitive way. So if you're talking about Kylo Ren Data Vault comes out, he can come out with Craving Power, he can come out with the Rule of Law, the low card, that gives him +2 health and captures a unit. He has a really good ability to stabilize the board as he comes out. Chancellor Palpatine doesn't stabilize games nearly as well as Kylo does. Even though he has more stats, he doesn't have the same ability to stabilize games. And to me, that's a really, really big problem with Chancellor Palpatine. The second problem that I have with Palpatine is, like, there's just not that many plot cards in the game. There's only one set that has plot card, which is obviously Secret of Power, and there's just not that many plot cards. So the option that you have to build your deck in a certain way is not nearly as good as the one in Kylo. With Kylo, you can play with any upgrade, and there's been a vast amount of upgrades that have been printed throughout the history of Star Wars Unlimited. So you can build Kylo Ren in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different powerful ways. While Chancellor Palpatine is a lot more difficult to make him go well in multiple builds. Finally, the last thing that makes Kylo Ren better is that Kylo Ren does have some really powerful synergies with his ability, because he can basically discard his own card. You can use this, of course, in combination to put some heroism card in your discard to make Anakin Skywalker -6/-6. You can also, of course, one of the most powerful combo with Kylo Tarkin, and I think one of the big reasons why Kylo Tarkin is a good deck is because it combined with MiGs. You can play MiGs on turn 1, discard a card from your hand, deal 2 damage to something used, and this is a really good way to stabilize the game early on. There's no such thing with Chancellor Palpatine. So, yeah, overall, I feel like this is just a bad version of Kylo. He's not a bad leader, and maybe in a world where there's a lot more plot cards, I can see him being better. He's definitely not a bad leader. You can build like a Chancellor Palpatine Daredevil deck, and he's going to have a very impactful deployment. The discount on the deployment can really give you some really massive things, even though the discount is not always useful from my experience. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's kind of meh. So the discount is not usually, you still have a very big deployment, but you still need to have the right cards, the right moment to make them work. So overall, my constructed rating for Palpatine is not quite good enough. I think the leader is nice, but I think that what he does, Kylo, whether you talk about the Kylo control or Kylo combo, does so much better than his. And Kylo will actually become better and better as more upgrades are printed. I'm not sure. Plot is not an evergreen ability. We don't know when we're going to see plot again in a set, and by the time it happens, Palpatine might just be too weak overall. What about Limited? What do we think about Palpatine in Limited? So in Limited, the only moment where you will be able to play this card in Limited will be at the pre-release. I think that Chancellor Palpatine can be quite good in Limited if under two conditions. The first condition is that you have a very defensive deck that can stall out the game. You get good removals, you get good Sentinel units to delay the game up to the point where you get to 7 deployments. And the second condition is, of course, you get enough plot cards to make him work. So I haven't done the math, so I don't know exactly how many plot cards you need to make him work, but I would assume at least 5 or 6 plot cards in order to make his ability work consistently, and in order to really give him the great deployment. I would say at least 5 or 6 good plot cards. So in this case, I put him in Specialized, because even the plot card by themselves are not enough to make him good. You also need a way to delay the game, because you are talking about a 7-cost deployment leader that has no ability to stabilize the game. So you have to be wary about this. Even in Limited, games can be well over by the time you deploy your leader. So I would say in Limited, it is good under 2 conditions. You get enough plot cards, and you get enough defensive card to protect yourself. And if you have those 2 conditions combined, then it will be quite good. Moving on to Jabba the Hutt. Jabba the Hutt was a difficult one to rate. He has a really powerful ability once he's deployed. However, his leader ability is quite difficult to use. It's kind of a ping that like many leaders have, but it's a ping that costs resource, and it's a ping that only works if you have a unit that is damaged. And unfortunately, the self-damage units are in the game generally are quite bad. I don't think playing Jabba the Hutt with card that self-damage is the way to go. I think the best way to go is to try to build around his leader deploy, and if you can use this ability every once in a while, then that's fine. But I would say his leader deploy is really where you should be. Is really the bread and butter of Jabba. So his leader deploy basically makes it so when a unit is dealt damage, it will deal that much damage to an enemy unit, and it can be a different unit. So it makes it's really really strong with ambush cards. So you basically get an ambush, kill something, and then this thing that you kill, then you can deal damage to another unit, and that can be really really powerful. And the fact that Jabba the Hutt has 8 health make it very difficult to kill. He's obviously in the right colors to be playing ECL, Vader ECL, so you can go Vader ECL, Jabba the Hutt, and do some really nasty things with this. Obviously, this has some problems. The first problem is that this kind of gameplay and strategy only really works against other ground-based mid-range decks. If you're playing against a control deck, that ability is useless. If you're running against a space deck, this ability is going to be a lot more difficult to use. You need to have now some ambush space unit, which we don't really have that many of. So overall, and obviously everything comes to the fact that you can keep Jabba the Hutt alive, which is not always possible. He is tanky and he's difficult to kill, but so overall, I think that Jabba the Hutt is once again missing a little something. I think his leader ability needed to be more impactful. His stats, a lot of people criticizing him for his stats. I think that he has the right amount of stat points he has 10 points of stats for 5 deploy, which is nice. And once again, yes, he's not really killing anything by himself, but I don't think that's a problem. I think the most important thing is for him to stay alive. So I think he's a decent leader, and you can build a pretty cool mid-range deck. In my opinion, the best way to running is with Yellow. Yellow has a lot of very powerful ambush cards and some cool things going on, but overall, I think he's just not quite good enough for Constructed. He's once again, he's definitely playable, but he's missing something to really be competitive. His ability is only useful when he's deployed, and once again, that ability is only truly good against certain type of decks, and you really have to heavily play into it and build into it to make it good. How do we think about this card in draft? I think in draft, the ability unit gets damage without getting killed far more often, making his ability overall more useful. Unfortunately, in limited, there's just not that many ambush cards as far as I've seen. So I'm putting him in playable. I don't think he's great, but he's playable. I don't think he's great, but he's definitely going to be able to do some work. And if you can get some ambush card with him, he's going to be great. But there's just not that many ambush cards in this set as far as I've seen. Moving on to Lamasu. Lamasu has kind of like a lot of cool things going on. Cost reduction, always in any trading card game, is always something very, very scary. His ability basically allows him to do card advantage, to can play a discard from your discard into play, and it costs 1 less. So in theory, all this looks really cool and stuff. The problem is, first of all, cost reduction is great, but cost reduction on upgrade is not that great, because you usually don't really play upgrades on curve, or at least you're not playing them on curve. Like, if you think about it, like, if you play a 2-cost upgrade, making it cost 1, really, it's not really that big of a deal. And if you're making a cost 3, cost 2, it would be a big deal if you could play on turn 1, but you usually can't because you don't have any units to play on turn 1. So the cost reduction only is good on upgrade that costs 1 or on grabs that costs 4. But those are not the most common ones, and it's certainly not the most powerful. So it's simply just the ability is just simply not that useful. In generally speaking, and it doesn't even work on non-vehicle units, so it doesn't work on pilots. And it also means that you can't really play upgrades on vehicles, which is also forces you to play a ground-based build instead of being able to go for a balanced approach, which is usually what you want to do. Then, yes, the on-attack ability is very powerful, but his stats are awful. We get into a 3-7, 6 deploy. The stats are just too low for a 6 deploy leader. And even though the ability is powerful, you still need to have upgrades in your discard pile for this to work. And it actually only, the upgrades come into play only after the unit completed the attack, meaning that you cannot benefit from the upgrade as you were attacking, which is another issue. So, in my opinion, Lamasu is simply just unplayable. Like, he's just not good enough, unfortunately. As far as limited, I also think that he's bad. In limited, once again, there's just not that many upgrades. And the thing is, like, he's kind of has the problem of being specialized, like Palpatine, but whenever you actually do manage to get enough upgrades for him to work, even then, he's not going to be great, which to me means he's just a bad leader. Moving on to Leia Organa. So Leia Organa is one of these leaders which can put experience on unit by paying 1, and we know for a fact that those leaders are really, really powerful in limited, but how about constructed? In constructed, I don't think this leader is really good. The thing is, like, you need to disclose the ability to give experience, for 1, is quite slow in constructed. This is the kind of ability that is a little bit too slow. It works great in limited, but in constructed, it's just a little bit too slow. And generally speaking, leaders that do have such ability don't really see much play unless they have really good deployment, unless their ability is very easy to trigger, which is the case, for example, Leia Organa. Snoke can also see a little bit of play, but it's not like, those are not like the most competitive leaders. And the problem is, like, Leia Organa, the fact that she has to disclose a colors that is different from the unit that is getting the experience, it's actually quite difficult, because most of the best, so let's say you're playing a white deck, and most of the best units in the game are double colored, meaning they are either green-white or blue-white. And let's say you want to put an experience on a green-white unit. Well, if you want to put an experience on green-white units, you have to disclose a mono-green card. Either you playing an out-of-aspect card in your deck just for that, which would be a horrible idea, or you need to have a mono-green card in your hand, which is not often going to be the case, because once again, mono-colored card in your decks are going to be in minorities, because they are usually, once again, it's a general statement, usually the weakest cards. So it's just not going to be that easy. The condition is actually pretty steep in constructed. because in Constructed, most of the cards are going to be double colored. And same goes for herself. So she comes into play and then she can put experience on herself, which is great. But the thing is, she once again needs to disclose something. So she's a little bit too slow because she has to pay for upgrade. She also deploys on 6, which we know is usually too slow. She's a 4/7, which as we said many times is not enough stats for a 6 cost. Once again, she can put experience on herself, so she's kind of a 5/8. But once again, you need to have a mono green card. Like if you got a mono card that is not blue in your hand to disclose whenever you're attacking with her. So that's just a little bit tricky. So for Constructed, I think she's not good. I think she's unplayable. I think she's just inferior to Rey. I think if you want to play a leader, a blue-white leader that gives experience and deploys on 6, Rey is a far better leader. Her Restore 3 is an absolute game changer once she deploys, and her experience ability is far easier to use, far less conditional. So there's just simply no reason to play her. But I think that even if Rey did not exist, I don't think Leia Organa would be a good leader. However, in draft, it's a completely different story. If you're talking about limited, this is a completely different story for 2 major reasons. The first reason is that the ability to put experience on unit in draft or sealed is far more powerful. You don't always play on curve, perfectly on curve whenever you play limited, so having an ability that gives you some gas for playing on curve is great. The fact that you can put experience unit on the same units over and over again, she is very comparable to Snoke, and Snoke was the best leader in Legend of the Force for draft and sealed. So Leia Organa, she's very similar to Snoke. Her condition is a lot easier to complete in sealed, because first of all, in sealed you're far more likely to have some out of aspect card, as you usually put some filler cards, making her ability very easy to use. And once again, you also play a lot more monocolored card in draft as well, making her ability just so much easier to use in sealed and draft. So she's going to be, in my opinion, she's going to be the best leader for in limited for Secret of Power. She's just you don't need to build around her at all. Or basically playing a leader like this means that every single 1 cost card in your deck becomes better, because you can open up the game with a 1 cost and then use her ability to give a +1/+1. And I could even argue that she's better than Snoke, because Snoke did require you to play a lot of villainy cards in your deck to actually work, while Leia does not need that. The disclose, I think, is actually less of a condition. We'll see exactly how that pans out, but anyway, I'm not sure if she's better or worse than Snoke, but in any case, I'm pretty confident she's the best leader for draft and limited in Secret of Power. Moving on now to Satine. I actually was pretty excited about Satine, and then I thought a little bit about it and realized that she's actually pretty terrible. And the reason for it is, I'm gonna give a shout out to Al for putting me to reason on this leader. What's the problem with this leader? First of all, the leader ability is awful. Yes, you can heal your damage on unit, which is great, but Obi-Wan can do the same. It doesn't have to deal damage to your base. Having to do this at the cost of dealing damage to your base is pretty annoying. So her ability is basically a worse version of Obi-Wan, which is kind of annoying. And then her leader deploy is kind of rough, because the fact that she can just die without giving any value back to the opponent is a really big deal, because your opponent can just attack into it and kill her basically for free. Even though she might take a few attacks to die because she has 8 HP, she's still just incredibly easy to take off the board without much of a cost. And the Restore 4 can be really good against some decks, but against most decks, like if you're playing against a mid-range deck, or if you're playing against a control deck, then literally the Restore doesn't really matter, because what matters in those matchups is the control of the board and card advantage. So she has an ability that is useless against a very big chunk of the meta. She can be killed without any giving value back, and she has a leader ability that is actually not that great, because you have to deal damage to your own base. So I understand that there's synergies between, oh yeah, you deal damage to your own base and then she deploys and you get those else back. Okay, but like your leader deploy should not be here to make up for the weakness of your leader's ability. That's just not how a good leader works. So in Constructed, I think she's absolutely unplayable. You can have a double blue build, like with a lot of sentinels And that kind of build can be really powerful against aggro, and I can see her being really powerful against aggro, but against anything that is not aggro, she's pretty awful. And for me, that's not good enough for a leader. And then in limited, I actually put it in playable, but actually I think she's bad. So I'm sorry about this. I put it in playable. I put it in playable, I think, because I think the ability can be nice, but it's gonna, like, I have to say she's hard to rate in limited, because in limited we don't know yet how aggressive the limited format is gonna be. If the limited format is really, really racy, she might be actually pretty good. And also she if you play enough Sentinels, she might be quite good. So I kind of gave her the benefit of the doubt in draft. We'll see how that pans out. I'm still not entirely sure. Once again, I have not played limited so far. She's also a counter leader that we've never seen before. But obviously, if you're in those colors, most likely you're going to be playing Leia. Moving on, we got Colonel Yularen. Colonel Yularen is very interesting. He's basically the same, very similar to Leia, the old Leia from Spark of Rebellion, as it allows you for free to attack with multiple units at once, which is a very powerful action cheating ability in aggressive decks. And he also has a pretty good deployment, getting himself a 4/6 for 5 resource. So I think he's what I like about him is, like, I think he doesn't have the same. Leia only works on rebels, while Colonel Yularen needs to make sure that the 2 units have a different cost. Essentially, one has to be cost lower than the other. And I think this ability is going to be easier to build around than the one of Leia, the restriction of rebels. Also, he's a 4/6 for 5 instead of being a 3/6 raid 1 for 5, which is slightly better as well. So he's slightly better than Leia. The problem is he's in a color combination where that is not really enticing for aggressive deck. I just think, generally speaking, villainy is a lot worse for aggro than heroism. Heroism, generally speaking, have far better aggressive cards than villainy, and so that's the reason why most villainy, like, if you think about the villainy aggro decks that have ever been played in Star Wars Unlimited, they are almost always space decks. So I guess you could build a space deck with Colonel Yularen, but then you're probably better off just playing like Vader or something. So this is kind of the problem I have, is that villainy just simply, and especially villainy green, is not a great color for aggressive decks. We recently got a 3/3 for 2, which is nice, but I don't feel like this color is great for aggressive decks, generally speaking. So this is the problem. I think he's a good leader in the wrong colors, if I had to kind of summarize. So if I think about constructed, I'm putting it in the categories of not quite good enough, which honestly I could be wrong about. This one, but I still haven't seen a Yularen aggro deck that convinced me, okay, this is going to be meta, this is going to be great. I just don't think he's quite there. I just think the card pool for the support for him is just not there. For limited, though, he's a lot better. I think in limited, he's going to be really solid. His ability is going to be quite useful, and he has a quite decent leader deployment. He's not on the level of Leia, but I think you can build an aggressive deck with Yularen and be quite happy about it. And even if you're not playing aggro, I still think his action cheating ability is going to be very useful. Before we continue this video, I just want to let you know that you can pick up Command for €3 on card market. Double Green is getting some massive upgrade this set, and Command might see more play, so keep an eye on this card. Moving on, we got Dryden Vos. Dryden Vos, I've tried the card, and I find it way too clunky. I think what kills the card, in my opinion, is the fact that you have to discard a card that costs 6 or more in order to give ambush to something that costs 5 or less. So the restriction of the card having to cost 6 or more, I think is specifically that is what kills the card. The problem is that in order to make that consistent, you need to then play a lot of 6 drops. Usually those cards are the card that you want to resource early on in the game. And you can't really have an infinite of expensive cards in your deck. It makes it so you can't always give ambush to the cards you want whenever you're playing this card. It just makes the ability very clunky. So the ability, even though it is very powerful, it is unfortunately quite clunky. Also, the best card to give ambush to usually costs 6, not 5, especially in villainy. So that's a little bit awkward as well. If you look at the card that really benefit from getting ambush, there's some good ones, but it's nothing crazy compared to the ones that cost 6. So this is really kind of like what is awkward. His ability, of course, becomes a lot better when he deploys. The problem is like he deploys really late and has really bad stats, getting some 5-7 overwhelm. So overall, I think Dryden Vos, also the fact it's all based on ambush. We know ambush is a mechanic that only affects the ground. Now we are, since basically Jump to Light Speed, we are much more in an environment where we are quite balanced between the space. There's now a numerous amount of full aggro space. So sometimes it can be a little bit awkward to find the right ambush for the right arena, which is another problem with this card. So overall, what do I think about it? So I think Dryden Vos can do some really, really powerful things. Yes, of course, he can deploy, he can discard cards to enable Anakin Skywalker, he can discard cards to enable Palpatine's return, but all this is a little bit Christmas land. It's like, you need to, as much as I've tried to make it work, but it doesn't work as well in practice that it works in theory. Like in theory, the leaders is great. Ambush one of the most powerful mechanic in the game, and having an ability that helps you stabilize the game whenever you have a late deploy leader is great. But the practice is that it's just too clunky. All of his kind of synergies don't always line up the way you want. Ambush by itself, as I said, is a clunky mechanic sometimes because you need to be on the right arenas to fight the right targets. So there's just multiple layers of clunkiness that you got to get through that makes the leader difficult to play. So it can do really, really powerful things, but overall I find it too clunky, and that's why I'm going to put it in the quite good enough category. If we're not talking about limited, I put him in the playable. I think that if you can get enough 6 cost cards to enable it, the good news is like you can play out of aspect card that you can discard to give your cards ambush for free, which I think is very powerful. So I think he's playable in limited, but he's going to be clunky as well. But he's powerful enough that I'm willing to give him the playable rate. Next we got Bail Organa. So Bail Organa is by far the leader I've played the most with since the set has been revealed. I personally love the leaders. It does something that is truly different from any other leaders we've seen before, and that fight by itself makes it my favorite leader in the set. Is it powerful though? So something to understand is that his leader ability is you never use it. You basically never use it. The only cases where you use it is on turn 2, if you got a 2-drop that gets defeated, and you got 1 resources left and you using that resource to draw a card, you can do that. But yeah, the leader's ability is basically useless. I guess it can also be useful. Let's say you are planning to deploy Bail and your opponent just pillage you, and that can be like an out for this. But overall, the leader ability basically doesn't matter. What makes this leader powerful is obviously his leader deploy. The fact that you can deploy your leader for free, discarding 2 cards as early as turn 4, and you can deploy him over and over and over and over and over again. And the thing is, like with Bail, you really want to try to deploy him every turn if you can, because obviously you're combining in with a base that gives you value. The best one, in my opinion, is Droid Manufactory, and you're getting just an absurd amount of value deploying your leader every single turn, and then playing with plot cards instead of playing from your hand. So basically, the biggest archetype I play with Bail, of course, Bail double green. I'm not excluding the possibility that there are other leaders that work with him. There's other colors. I think the best one, probably second best, might be red. But basically, I think the green is the best because of the Droid Manufactory synergy. But once again, I think there's a lot of different untapped potential for this leader. There's a lot of things to experiment with. And it's also what gives me hope for this leader in the future. So obviously this is a leader that it's a swarmy kind of aggro deck. So it does have counters. It gets countered by Barrage. It gets countered by Bombing Run really, really hard. It's a leader that your opponent can can really block with the right cards, and can really neutralize. So it's a really counterable leader. You can also, of course, play heavily on the discard to prevent Bail from being able to deploy. So there's some counters to this leader, but I think that and that's the reason why I don't think this leader can potentially be like the meta killer. I don't think the meta can evolve around Bail, because as soon as Bail is going to become like popular as a deck, people will start countering it, and it will just be unplayable. However, if there's nobody to counter it, I think this deck is incredible. It's, first of all, incredibly powerful against control, because against control, you basically have a leader that's it's just like a threat that deploys over and over and over again. It's just so incredibly difficult for control to manage. And if you're playing this against aggro, it's also a leader that can do some work. He heals you every time you play a card from your resource, which you're going to be doing a lot of, so it just heals you over and over again. Leia Organa will deploy often as a 5/5 in combination with Jar Jar Binks, or even if you put a +2/+3 upgrade on him, and he can start like cleaning the board and basically just claiming the board. So I think there's a lot of good things going on with this leader. I think he's going to be competitive, but I don't think he's going to be meta defining. So for me, he's going to be meta. I'm putting in in A tier basically for constructed. I think there's a lot of powerful things going on. For limited, I think he's very specialized, because in order to make him work in limited, I think you're going to need to have a lot of plot cards. And then it's going to be it's very hard to know if he's going to be good in limited. But I'm assuming it's going to be really dependent on the amount of plot cards you have. Moving on to Mon Mothma. So Mon Mothma, basically, as in my opinion, among all the leaders that we've seen that can basically remove aspect penalties as is leader's ability, I think Mon Mothma is by far the best one, because there's a lot of officials in the game, and there's especially a lot of officials in Secret of Power. So her ability actually gives her a significant advantage in terms of deck building possibilities. The second advantage, of course, is she allows you to be, basically you can play double green, and you can still play a lot of cards with her, and you still have access to almost every good card for her anyway by playing double green, which gives you access to double green cards, which can be very powerful. She also does deploy on 5 with 3/7, which is a really good stat line, and her ability to give official +1 health is very relevant as well. So she's really, really cool. Obviously, she's reliant really on the official, so in my opinion, the best way to run Mon Mothma is obviously double green with Droid Manufactory, and you playing, once again, the Unity of Purpose deck with her. And I think that she's significantly better than Rex at doing that. The reason is she has access to a much wider card pool than Rex does, because she has access to all of the officials on top of all the cards that Rex already has access to. And the +1 health to all the officials as she deploys is very, very important, as it makes it so your board is a lot harder to clean up as you get into the 6 resource turn for Unity of Purpose. And she herself has much bigger stats than Rex. So yes, she doesn't come with a 2/2 attached to her, but overall I think she's just a better leader than Rex. Some people want to say, oh yeah, Rex ability, you don't have Rex ability to generate tokens. You barely use that. If you ever played Rex Unity of Purpose, this ability is rarely used, because basically this is an ability that, okay, you're going to be playing, if you run out of card and you want to have ways to use your resource, then you're going to use that. But the thing is, the Unity of Purpose deck is really a deck that cares about the first 5 turns in the game. If you haven't won by then there's no much you can do to win anyway. Like it's not, this ability is not gonna save you. So honestly, the leader's ability of Rex really doesn't matter. It's all about his deployment. And Mon Mothma, she has a comparably powerful deployment, but she has a much more useful leader ability for the deck building of the deck. So in my opinion, she's undeniably going to replace Rex for the Unity of Purpose. So obviously the big question now is Unity of Purpose going to be a thing in this meta? And the answer to that question is it's going to depend on the meta. Like, we don't really know. And that's the reason why I'm going to put it in situational, because Unity of Purpose decks are really great against control. They're quite bad against aggro, but to be fair, there's been there's the official, I forgot his name, but the official that gives you 2 health for every official you have in play. That card really helps against aggro. So I feel like the Mon Mothma is going to be a lot better against aggro than the Rex deck was. The problem is still those mid-range decks who have the ability to clean up the board very efficiently. Those are going to be the problem for Mon Mothma, and this is the thing that's going to make it so I'm not super confident to place it higher than B tier. But she's definitely going to be a competitive leader. It's just a matter of which meta are you in a meta where you can play her or not. In limited, I think she's quite specialized. I put her in the specialized category because obviously, like, I think it's mostly going to be in sealed where I'm going to be looking at her, because she allows you to she gives you access to a wider amount of card and gives you, so if you have very powerful officials that you can't really play, but thanks to her ability you can, and you can make your deck significantly better thanks to this, I think she's going to be good. But obviously that's going to require a very specific setting, because of course you're not playing without leader ability, so you need to have really good cards to make up for that. However, she does have a really good leader deployment, so I think in limited she's going to be quite good, assuming you can play enough out of aspect officials that you wouldn't be able to play otherwise. Moving on now to Dedra Miro. So Dedra Miro is a very interesting leader. A lot of people have been calling it an aggro leader because she deploys early and she can slap for 4-5. I don't think she's an aggro leader because her ability is a control ability, as it's one of the most control leader ability in the entire game. It's basically either removal or draw card. The only deck in which that you're either happy that you're playing that your opponent deals damage or draw a card is in a control deck. So currently I've seen 2 ways of playing Dedra. People have been trying her as hard control, running her not only with Colossus. I think Colossus is really great fit for her because her leader's ability is going to draw a lot of cards throughout the game, so it does make up for the card you're not starting with, and so yeah, and then getting 5 extra HP for control deck is great. And then she does deploys early, which is not useless in a control deck again, because then you can use her leader attack to actually just clean up the board and stabilize early in the game. So she's great at stabilizing early. The ability, obviously you need to play a lot of grenade strike, daring raid in order to take advantage of and punish your opponent for choosing the damage over the draw. So she's very powerful because her ability is kind of it's a win-win either way, like dealing 2 damage for 1 or drawing a card for 1. Either of those options are extremely powerful in my opinion. So her ability is incredible, and her deployment is also really good. As she comes out, she will very often be a 2-5 raid 2, and that can clean up a lot of stuff. So that's really good. So that's the first way she's been run. The second way she's been run is more of a kind of a mid-range shell. Some people have been trying her in double red, or some people have been trying her in blue, but also in more mid-range. In more mid-range, the ability is a little bit worse because people are usually going to let you draw, and then but you can have ways to kind of take advantage of this. You have notably the new buff that costs 3 that gives you +1, that allows you to attack and gives +1 for every card you have in hand, so you can really punish your opponent for giving you a lot of cards. So there's a lot of cool things going on with her, and I think she's really powerful. I think her leader ability is great. I think her deployment is great. The only problem I have with her is obviously she's best in hard control. Unfortunately, hard control is very poorly positioned in the meta. All the decks that we talked about earlier, the Unity of Purpose Mon Mothma deck or the Bale decks are also extremely powerful deck against control, and control was already struggling in Legend of the Force. They're just Fantasy Flight Game just keep printing more and more anti-control cards, and they haven't printed any good control cards in forever. I mean, you could argue Dedra is a great controlled card, but she's a leader. Like when I'm talking about regular cards, I think the main problem whenever I'm playing control is like I don't have a finisher. I don't have better late games than my opponents. That's really the sad part. Whenever I'm playing a control deck in Star Wars Unlimited, it's like, yes, I'm doing a great job. I'm delaying the game, But then I'm getting to the late game and I'm like, I like the best thing I can do is like Grey Dragon or an Avenger. It's like my opponents just laugh at this. Like it's just not that there's no real win condition for control right now. It's just so sad. It's really difficult to play control, and that's the reason why the most successful hard control decks have been in green, because at least green gives you access to Devastator and stuff, and ramps you into it, like Devastator or Reinforcement Walker, that actually gives you inevitability. But it's just like we're lacking late game options for control deck to really be a thing in this game, and that's the main problem with Dedra. Is like, yeah, she's out control, and out control is not an archetype that FFG really want to push. So overall, what do I think about her? I think she's going to be meta. I'll be very surprised if there's definitely a meta where I can see hard control being powerful, and in which case that happens, Dedra will be one of the options being chosen. Some people have been asking me if I think she's better than Bossk. I think she's better than Bossk. Bossk, she is really like kind of linked to those very specific build. She does a really better job at Bossk at stabilizing the early stage of the game. Her ability is useful throughout the entire duration of the game, while Bossk is only really truly useful to get the double redeem. People have become a lot better at the game, and they are now doing a great job at preventing you from actually getting the double redeem. I think Bossk double redeem deployment is insanely powerful, but it's not so easy to pull off, and you can't always pull it off. While Dedra Miro, her ability is just good. She doesn't need any setup. She's just a really good ability, and her early deployment makes it easier to stabilize the game. Another thing as well is so that's going to be very interesting. But once again, I'm not dismissing the mid-range build of Dedra. I think that Dedra could also be meta through the mid-range build. So we're going to find out how it goes. But I think between those two different avenues, she can be quite competitive. In Limited, I think she's really solid, because in Limited, drawing cards is very useful. I mean, drawing card is not so useful, in Limited, but the early deployment, 4/5, almost guaranteed, is great. And then just paying one to draw a card. Yes, draw a card in Limited is not great, but the cost for doing so is so low that I think she's going to be a really decent leader. Moving on to Governor Pryce. So Governor Pryce is just not that exciting. Our ability costs resources, costs action, and is not very impactful. Be able to re-attack with a token unit is a very meh ability. She has a late deployment. Her attack bonus is quite situational, and she doesn't even get +1 attack bonus for the token that she's creating, because which is just a bit embarrassing. So yeah, she also has really bad stats for a 6 deploy leader. She just doesn't do anything particularly well. Her deployment can be powerful, but if it is powerful, that means you're already kind of winning the game. It means you have loads of tokens in play. So her leader deployment is only good whenever you're ahead. And her leader ability is not good, so she's unplayable in Constructed. In Draft, I think she's slightly better, because in having a wide board is far easier in Limited, and there's also a lot of support for her. There's a lot of token generation in, so I gave her like the benefit of the doubt in Limited. Moving on we got Cassian Andor. So Cassian Andor, if you heard me on my first impression video, is by far the leader design that I despise the most in this set. Having a leader that basically gives you a bonus that is very significant just for playing first is just silly, in my opinion. It's not good game design. It makes the game very coin flippy. But I got good news. And the good news is that Cassian Andor is not a good leader. And I am so happy that's the case, because I was really scared. I was like, oh, please don't make this leader a meta, because it's going to be so annoying. But it turns out he's not really good. He has his ability to make units can't be attacked if you got the initiative. He's kind of good, but there's a number of decks that just simply don't care about it. First of all, they're decks that just want to win against aggro bar racing. There are decks that will play Sentinels to kind of stabilize the game. There's people who are going to be stabilizing by healing themselves. There's going to be decks that are going to be using removal. So this passive is actually useful if you're playing first, but if you're playing against a deck that's really trying to stabilize the game by attacking your units using ambush or using their own units. And it turns out there's not that many decks that actually do that. So Cassian's basically ability is just not that useful. Then obviously 6-spot deploy leader for an aggro deck is awful, and the leader deploy is garbage if you don't have initiative. And it's also very counterable, as it can be countered by -3/-3, -2/-2, which there's plenty of in the game, and obviously Sentinel units. So it's very counterable, it comes into play late, and it's garbage if you don't have initiative. So even I've seen a lot of, I'm quite confident about my diagnosis on this leader, simply because I played a lot against it online. For some reason, there's a lot of people who play this deck, so it's very, very popular, and it's bad. I almost never lose to it. It's so much worse than Sabine in so many ways. And obviously, the other problem with Cassian is the fact that the competition in red-white is insane. Between Cassian and Hantu, there's no real room for any, like, you have to be insanely powerful to be good, to be able to compete with those leaders in that color combination. So it's just not a good leader. So to me, I put it in not quite good enough. Obviously there are scenarios in which it can be good, so this is why I didn't put him in unplayable. But I'm kind of like dunking on him because I think he's very, very overplayed on Carabas. But he's not terrible, and there's a situation where his ability is very, very powerful. But I don't think he is so he's not unplayable, but he's definitely not as good as people make it sound. And I'm really glad that's not the case, because he's a really toxic leader in my opinion. It's the kind of leader that you don't want to have being good in the game, in my opinion. Moving on, in limited I put it in playable, because in limited, being able to kill, to not be able to, much more than in constructed, in limited you're going to be trying to clean enemy units with your own units much often in limited, which makes his passive ability a lot more powerful. You're still very dependent on the initiative though, but if you do have initiative, then it's very powerful, unfortunately. I mean, once again, haven't played limited, so all this is pretty much speculation, but that's what I'm anticipating. Moving on to Luthen Rael, and this is another leader that I think is very overrated. So a lot of people are kind of saying, oh yeah, he's kind of interesting in the mid-range build, whatever. Like, I don't see it at all. I think his ability is extremely situational, having to attack with a unit, then unit has to be defeated, and then dealing extra damage, and actually that extra damage actually mattering. It's just a lot of if. It's a lot of if. Constructed in general is not a format where unit combat really matters, and basically this is a leader that kind of mess up with the combat math. Like, we've seen Jyn Erso doing this, we've seen the Grand Inquisitor from Legend of the Falls doing that. Those kind of leaders are not good. Those kind of leaders are not good in constructed. They're too situational, and they don't really do much. And I think Luthen Rael is no exception. His stats are bad for, he doesn't have good stats for a 5 deploy leader, and his ability gets better, I guess, but it's not that much better. He's just simply not good. And once again, the competition for red-white is insane. You have to be so much better than this if you want to see some competitive play in red-white, because you're always going to be compared to Hantu and Antu. I forgot also Anakin, Antu, and Sabine. So to me, he's unplayable and constructed. Obviously, cards that mess up with the combat math are a lot better in limited, so I'm anticipating he's going to be a lot better in limited. Moving on, we got Sly Moore. Sly Moore, I think our leader ability is too difficult to use in constructed. Having 4 or more exhausted units in play is not that easy in constructed, where having a large board is a lot more difficult. A color combination is not exactly the best to provide a large board anyway. Her deployment is not terrible. She doesn't have great stats, but her on-attack ability is quite powerful. But it's nothing crazy, nothing good enough to make up for the fact that the leader's ability is going to be very situational. So overall, in Constructed, I think she's unplayable. She's a lot better in Limited, simply because I think in Limited it's a lot easier to have 4 or more units that basically gets exhausted. And also there's a lot of support for token generation in the set. I think she's going to be a lot better in Limited. And then our leader deployment is also quite a bit better in Limited as well. So I think she's quite solid in Limited. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe she's just playable, but this is what I'm anticipating. Then we got C3PO. C3PO is terrible. His leader ability is exhaust abilities are always something you want to do first action, and you can't do this because it requires an exhausted unit, and it also costs resource, which is terrible for an exhaust effect. Yes, he has early deployment, but his stats are awful. 1/6, you don't do anything with 1/6. So basically the only good thing I can say about C3PO is the fact that he does combine really well with Babu Frick, but having to rely on drawing another card to make the card good is pretty bad, and Babu Frick is also easily killable before the C3PO even comes out. So this is not a justification to make him good. In my opinion, he's the worst leader in the set. He's absolutely unplayable and constructed, and he's also bad for Limited. Moving on, we got Padme Amidala. So Padme Amidala is... so basically, when she was first spoiled, we didn't have the context of the entire set. Now that we've seen the entire set, we can safely say that she's really good. She's really good because the set is... Some of the most powerful cards in the sets are disclose cards, so card that makes you reveal your own hand, or card that does self-discard. Like, for example, I forgot the name, like Bail Organa, the Bail 2 for 2. So this is really helping Padme a lot. She got a lot of support, and she also has card that only specifically work with her. The new Anakin Skywalker that becomes basically the 3/4 raid 2 for 3 whenever you Padme is also very powerful and fits in her game plan quite well as being kind of a mid-range tempo deck. So she has a lot of support. So basically the first thing that we saw when we first saw is like, oh, she's basically Quinlan with worse. She's worse than Quinlan because she deploys on 6, and she only gets 1 extra point of stats for having this. And Quinlan, basically, you don't need to build around him for him to be good. You can basically just play on curve, and that's it. While Padme, you actually need to have self-reveal and self-discard to actually make her work. So she has restrictions, and she also has a worse deploy. So what would you ever play Padme over a Quinlan? And my answer to this is that there's 2 arguments. The first argument is that Padme actually deals damage. You get to decide where the damage goes, which is a massive deal. The other argument in favor of Padme is that she has a lot of support. So the fact that she does require self-discard or self-reveal is not that big of a cost. So she's going to be more restricted in the build. The deck is going to be less adaptable than Quinlan for that reason. But so you're not gonna have the same wiggle room to adapt her to the meta as Quinlan can, but she's still gonna be incredibly powerful. So in my view, she's one of the best leaders in the set. So once again, she's not doing anything crazy. She's not doing anything that we've never seen before. But there's a chance that she's on equal par with Quinlan. Obviously, Quinlan is a million times worse after the ban of 4th row, but he's still a pretty decent leader. So comparing to Quinlan is very flattering, because if you are comparable to Quinlan, then you are legitimately one of the best. You are a really strong leader. Obviously, Quinlan not nearly as good as he used to be. Is she better than Quinlan? Is she worse? We don't really know, but what I'm quite confident about is that she's going to be meta. In my opinion, she's the best leader in the set. At least she's the safest bet in the set. I think Bail Organa has potential to be best leader in the set, but it's a little bit more experimental. It's a little bit more something we've never seen before. It's a lot more exciting compared to Padme. Padme is a very boring leader. She's just, oh yeah, you play with Tarkintown, and then you do the same Tarkintown bullshit that we've seen over and over again, because for some reason Fantasy Flight Game really likes pings effect. So as long as they keep putting pings that can come off on turn 1, Tarkington is still going to be a pain in the butt. But that's just the way it is. So yeah, she's going to be... I think she's likely to be meta. And I think she's going to be quite strong. She's not going to be like insane. I don't think she's going to be meta defining. I don't think she's going to... But she's safely... I think it's safe to say that she's a... If you want a leader that is... Okay, that's a safe bet. She's going to be best leader and said safe bet. It's Padme. Honestly, any of those 3 leaders that I put there have the potential to be best leader in the set. It's really going to come out to the meta. Once again, we don't really know how things are going to shape up. So any of those 3, I think, are pretty good candidates for being best leaders in the set. But I think out of the 3, the safest option is Padme. In draft, she's in limited, she's a lot more specialized because obviously she does require you to play. You don't have Tarkington, of course, in limited, and you don't have the guarantee that you're going to have enough self-discard or enough disclose to make the ability work. But I still think she's quite powerful if she had in the right conditions. So I'm going to put her in specialized. Moving on now to Sab&e. So Sab&e, she's quite nice. So as predicted, her ability to control the top of the deck is not as powerful as people were expecting when she was first revealed. I've warned people that said, be careful guys, leader abilities has no impact on the game, on the board, are not always great. But she does have some good support in the set. She comes out with a pretty good leader deployment, and her leader ability, once she deploys and once she attacks, like doing the Bazine effect when she deals damage to base, is very powerful. So I think she's quite good. I think she's not like amazing, but she's quite good, and I can see a meta where she could be really powerful. I played her, for example, in the Swarm deck. I think Swarm is the best way to get use of her ability, to be able to trigger her ability often, and also a good way to make sure that you can filter out the opponent deck to make sure they don't find any board wipes. But yeah, I think she's quite good. So she also has quite a few synergies in the set as well. So I think she's going to be situational and constructed, but I think she's going to see some play. She's going to be a niche leader, but I think she's going to see play. In limited, I think she's very solid. I think the ability to filter your opponent's deck in limited is far more powerful because obviously the quality of the cards in limited is very fluctuating. So being able to get rid of the best card of your opponent's deck is going to be really, really impactful in limited. And then she got a really good deployment. So I think she's really solid in limited. Next, we got DJ, which was my second leader that I was the most excited about in this set. And unfortunately, he's not good yet. Why is he not good? Simply because there's just not enough support for the weird color combination he's in. He's either double yellow plus another color. That means he cannot play any heroism or villainy cards, which are kind of the best card in the game. And there's not enough good double yellow card to carry him. So there's some cool stuff you can do with it. I talked about the DJ Piñata deck in my card reveal thing, but forced to admit that his color combination is very awkward. His ability is strong, but also very card intensive. If you don't have ways to draw cards, you run a card. If you really want to abuse the ability, you just run out of cards too easily. And his leader deploy is pretty mediocre. So unfortunately, he's not quite good yet. But I have hope for him. I have hope for him in a sense that at some point, Fantasy Flight Game is going to release a set where the main mechanic of the set is going to be leaders that are not heroism nor villainy. And when that happens, DJ is going to be here. And is going to have something to say about it. So in my opinion, he's not quite good enough, so I put it all the way at the bottom of the C tier category. In draft, he's obviously unplayable because obviously there's just too many cards you can't play, and there's no double yellow card. There's no good double yellow card to take advantage of, so he's absolutely unplayable and limited. And that's it. That's it for my leader tier list. I'm so sorry, it's a little bit dark in there. It actually the video was so long. The night came out as I was shooting this video. So once again, take my limited tier list with a grain of salt, as I haven't played limited yet, but at least this gives you like a little bit of an idea of what the leaders that we're talking about. If we're comparing the leader structures for limited compared to constructed, compared to Legion of the Force, in the previous set there were 3 leaders which I think were basically the best leaders, which were kind of a step above everybody else. In this set there's only 1. I don't think we are in the same situation as we were in Trial of the Republic, where we have 1 leader that was completely insane, which was Anakin, and then the rest of the... I think she's better, significantly better than the other leader, but it's not to the point where it's gonna feel super unfair. Hopefully. But there's quite a few leaders that are pretty solid. And the good news is that there's very few leaders that are unplayable. Only 3 leaders that are absolutely unplayable. I think that's not bad for limited. Talking about the constructed list, this one I'm a lot more confident about, because I've actually played a bit of constructed since the set was spoiled. So this one I'm a little bit more confident about. We got 5. Basically, we got 5 leaders, which I think are likely to be meta, which is not bad. Unfortunately, we'll still the leaders are still on the weaker side. I mean, if you compare to Spark of Rebellion, if you compare to the first 3 sets, leaders in year 2 have been so much weaker. Obviously, we won't have this problem next set as rotation will come about, but that's basically kind of how I see it. Thank you so much for following the video. Let me know if you agree or disagree. I haven't done extensive testing on all of those leaders, so obviously I could be wrong on all of them, on some of them, and obviously the meta is still not established yet, which also can lead to some misconceptions. I hope this video was informative, and I'll see you next time.